Welcome to the Mind Cut series.
Great to be here.
Today we're diving into a really fascinating and practical area, functional medicine. We're drawing heavily from a discussion with Dr. Mark Hyman, who's, a major figure in this field.
Absolutely. He's got some really clear ways of explaining complex ideas.
That's the plan for this deep dive. Pull out those useful insights, the actionable stuff for understanding your own health better. We'll look at the body as a system, key things that help you thrive, and also the common roadblocks.
Yeah, things like nutrition, environment, even the food industry itself.
Exactly. Think of it as a shortcut to getting a more informed perspective on, you.
Okay, so let's start with a core idea of functional medicine. What is it, really?
Good question.
Well, the big thing is seeing the body as this interconnected network. Not just separate organs doing their own thing, but everything influencing everything else, like a web.
Right. Which is quite different from, say, traditional medicine sometimes,
Yeah.
where you might go in with symptoms A, B, and C, and the focus is purely on diagnosing that cluster.
Exactly. Functional medicine kind of zooms out. Dr. Hyman calls it a meta framework, or even like an operating system for understanding our biology. It's about how the biological processes connect.
That makes sense. It's less about naming the disease and more about understanding the dysfunction.
Precisely. And his own story is pretty powerful here. He actually got really sick with mercury poisoning back when he was in China.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it caused a cascade of problems, adrenal issues, thyroid problems, mitochondrial dysfunction, cognitive fog, sleep disruption, the whole 9 yards.
So he had to figure it all out himself.
Pretty much. He had to reverse engineer his own health, connect the dots between all these seemingly unrelated symptoms, and that personal struggle, that investigation, really informed his whole approach.
So it became about the science of creating health, not just fighting disease. That's a really positive shift in perspective.
It is. It's proactive. And when you talk about creating health, the foundation is always what we put in our bodies.
Food,
Yeah.
right.
Food. Simple as that sounds. Dr. Hyman often quotes Michael Pollan. Eat food, mostly plants, not too much. It's about prioritizing real whole foods.
Things your great-grandmother might recognize, maybe.
Exactly. Single ingredient foods, or foods with ingredient lists you can actually, understand. If it reads like a chemistry experiment, maybe reconsider.
So quality protein, fruits, vegetables, healthy fats, the basics.
The basics, yeah. Though fats can get a bit complicated. He touches on seed oils, for instance.
Yes. That's always a hot topic.
It is. He mentions a specific study, the Minnesota coronary experiment. It found that replacing saturated fat with corn oil actually increased the risk of death, even though it lowered LDL cholesterol.
Really? Despite lowering the bad cholesterol.
Right. So the takeaway isn't simple. It suggests that maybe focusing only on LDL isn't the full picture, and the type of fat really matters. It's complex.
It's definitely food for thought. What about carbs? Sugar and starch?
Oh, that's a huge one in the modern diet. He points out we eat vastly more starch and sugar than, say, hunter-gatherers ever did, like orders of magnitude more.
And it affects blood sugar dramatically, right?
Hugely. Get this. The starch in refined flour, like white bread, can actually spike your blood sugar faster than table sugar. Its glycemic index is higher.
Wow. White bread higher than sugar.
Yeah. And he connects this massive increase in refined carbs and sugar to that sort of hockey stick rise we've seen in obesity and type 2 diabetes, especially since dietary guidelines started pushing low-fat, high-carb diets back in the day.
Correlation isn't causation, but it certainly makes you wonder about unintended consequences.
It does. Okay, so real food is foundational. But what about filling the gaps? That brings us to supplements.
Because even if we eat well, we might not be getting everything we need anymore.
That's his argument. Changes in farming, soil depletion, urbanization,
Yeah.
It all adds up. Our food just might not be as nutrient and dense as it once was.
And there's data to back that up.
Yeah, he cites the NANES survey. There's a big government survey looking at American health and nutrition. The numbers are pretty stark.
Like what?
Like over 90% of people are low on omega-3 fats. Around 80% don't get enough vitamin D. Over half are low in magnesium. It's widespread.
Those are massive percentages. So, practically speaking, what are the core supplements he generally suggests for most people?
He keeps it fairly simple for a baseline. First, omega-3 is aiming for about 1 to 2 grams of EPA and DHA combined.
Okay.
Second, vitamin D3. Most adults probably need somewhere in the 2,000 to 4,000 IU range daily, though testing is best.
Got it. D3.
And third, a good quality multivitamin. The key is good quality, meaning it has forms of nutrients your body can actually absorb and use, what we call bioavailable forms.
So not just any multi-off-the-shelf necessarily.
Ideally not. He also mentions a couple others to consider. Iodine is one because low thyroid function is surprisingly common.
Okay. And B12. He mentioned methylated B12. What's the deal with methylated?
Methylation. It's like a fundamental biochemical process involved in tons of things, like turning genes on and off. Some people have genetic variations that make it harder for them to process standard B vitamins. Methylated forms are sort of pre-activated, easier for the body to use directly.
Interesting. So it bypasses a potential bottleneck for some people.
Exactly. But again, while these are general ideas, his gold standard is always test, don't guess. Get blood work to see your actual levels.
Right. But he also gets that testing isn't always practical or affordable for everyone.
For sure. It's about balancing general advice with the ideal of personalization. Okay, so we've covered ingredients for health. What about the things that get in the way, the impediments?
Right, the obstacles, like environmental factors.
Exactly. Starting with the air we breathe. It's easy to forget about, but crucial.
What kind of things are we talking about, beyond just general smog?
You mentioned specific toxins like mercury and lead, often from things like coal-burning power plants, even far away. And wildfire smoke is another big one now, full of nasty chemicals, including things called PFAS.
And air pollution travels, doesn't it?
It's global. So even if you live somewhere seemingly clean, you can still be exposed. That's why he suggests things like good home air. Filter's a practical step to reduce indoor exposure.
Makes sense. And what about water?
Another fundamental. Tap water, unfortunately, can contain contaminants from wastewater. You think trace amounts of medications, pesticides, hormones, stuff you don't really want to be drinking.
Yikes. So filters again.
He specifically recommends reverse osmosis filters. They're pretty effective at removing a wide range of these contaminants.
Okay, air and water. Got it. Now let's shift to a really big impediment he discusses, the food industry itself.
Ah, yes. He definitely has some strong views here.
He challenges the idea that eating healthy has to be expensive, right?
He does. He points out that the real foundation's eating whole foods, moving your body, sleeping well, managing stress. Those are mostly free or low cost.
Yeah.
The idea that healthy is expensive is often perpetuated by the marketing of processed, convenient, but ultimately less healthy options.
So the industry kind of pushes cheap, appealing junk food.
That's his argument. That there's a lot of, well, brainwashing is a strong word, but sophisticated marketing aimed at getting us hooked on processed foods. And the true cost isn't just the sticker price.
What do you mean?
The cost to our health. The burden on the healthcare system from chronic diseases linked to diet, the environmental impact of industrial agriculture, it all adds up.
He also talks about the history, how things changed after World War II.
Yeah, this shift towards industrialization. Convenience became king. Think TV dinners, Betty Crocker cake mixes. We lost a lot of traditional cooking skills and knowledge about real food preparation.
And food became more of a commodity, less about nourishment.
Exactly. And junk food, engineered to be hyper-palatable, became a massive part of the standard American diet.
And the industry's influence goes beyond just advertising, right? He talks about lobbying and funding.
Oh, absolutely. He points out how major food and beverage companies provide significant funding to professional health organizations, even ones you might think are impartial, like the American Heart Association or the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics.
And that funding can influence their recommendations or stances on policy.
Well, he gives the example of the AHA opposing efforts to remove sugary drinks from food assistance programs like SNFP. It raises questions about potential conflicts of interest, doesn't it?
It certainly does. He also mentioned industry funding for research.
Yeah, that the amount of money the food industry spends on nutrition research often dwarfs government funding. And sometimes they fund front groups or co-opt social groups to push certain narratives or sow doubt about conflicting science.
Wow. It sounds like a really complex web of influence.
It is. And you have massive consolidation, too. Just a few giant companies controlling a huge portion of the food supply. It gives them enormous power.
Okay, that's a bit sobering. Let's pivot to something more empowering he talks about.
Yeah.
This idea of food as medicine.
Yes, this is much more positive. The concept is that food isn't just calories or basic nutrients. Specific foods contain compounds that can have powerful, almost drug-like effects. Well, the classic example is the ketogenic diet for epilepsy. It's been used therapeutically for ages. But now, there's emerging research using keto for serious mental health conditions, too.
Really? Like what?
Things like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, even Alzheimer's, anxiety, depression. The theory often involves improving metabolic function and how the brain uses energy, focusing on the mitochondria, the cell's power plants.
That's fascinating, linking brain health so directly to metabolism.
It is, and he also connects the broader metabolic health crisis, obesity, diabetes, to the rising rates of certain cancers. Many cancers are now considered obesity-related or metabolically driven.
But it's not one size fits all, is it? Diet seems so individual.
Totally. He comes back to that test, don't guess idea. People respond differently. He tells a story about someone with severe colitis and inflammatory bowel disease who actually found remission on a carnivore keto diet, which sounds extreme, but it worked for them. Even with high LDL cholesterol, it highlights individuality.
Speaking of cholesterol, he suggests we look beyond the standard LDL number, right?
Yeah, he's a big proponent of looking at ApoB instead.
ApoB? What's that?
Think of LDL cholesterol as the cargo inside the cholesterol delivery trucks. ApoB is like counting the actual number of trucks. Many researchers now think the number of trucks, the particle number, is a better predictor of cardiovascular risk than just the total amount of cargo.
Huh. So more particles, even if they aren't all full of cholesterol, might be riskier.
That's the idea. Standard lipid panels don't usually give you that particle count directly. That's why he mentions advanced testing, like from services such as Function Health, which can measure ApoB, insulin resistance markers like C-peptide, inflammation, even methylation markers.
So getting a more detailed picture.
Exactly. Understanding the type and number of particles, not just the total cholesterol. People respond differently to diet, too.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's talk detox. We're exposed to toxins. What can we actually do about it?
Well, step one is always reduce exposure, cleaner air, cleaner water, like we discussed.
Right, minimize what's coming in.
Then, support your body's natural detox systems through diet. Cruciferous vegetables are key: broccoli, cauliflower, kale. They contain sulforaphane, which boosts detox pathways.
Okay, eat your broccoli. What else?
Garlic is great. Cilantro, especially the juice, can be helpful. And fiber. Fiber is crucial for binding toxins in your gut so you can eliminate them.
So lots of plants, basically. Any supplements specifically for detox?
He mentions a few common ones. N-acetylcysteine, or NAC, helps your body make glutathione, which is like the master antioxidant and detoxifier.
NAC, okay.
Also, lipoic acid. Make sure you have enough B vitamins, especially those methylated forms, and adequate protein, because detox pathways require amino acids.
What about things like activated charcoal?
He cautions against using it just generally for heavy metals. It can bind minerals too. It has its uses, but maybe not as an everyday thing without specific guidance.
And fish. We hear about mercury in fish.
Good point. He recommends focusing on smaller, lower mercury fish. The acronym SMESH is helpful: salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, herring, and choosing reputable sources that test for contaminants.
SMASH. Got it. Okay, shifting gears slightly. Longevity and optimization, going beyond just being not sick.
Right. This is about thriving. The key idea is that our bodies have amazing built-in healing and repair systems. Sometimes they just need support, especially as we age.
Like NAD. I hear about that a lot.
Yes, NAD is crucial for energy production and DNA repair, but levels naturally decline with age. NMN is a precursor to NAD. He mentions taking NMN himself and noticing more energy, faster hair, and nail growth. Anecdotal, but interesting.
And exosomes. That sounds kind of sci-fi.
Huh, a little. They're basically tiny messenger bubbles released by cells. They carry growth factors, anti-inflammatory signals. They help cells communicate and coordinate healing.
And he had personal experience with them.
Yeah, he shared a story about having pretty severe depression after COVID and finding rapid relief after using exosomes. Again, anecdotal, but points to their potential role in regeneration and healing.
What about peptides? They seem popular in the optimization world.
They are powerful, yes. But he adds a strong note of caution. These are potent compounds, things like BPC-157 for healing or growth hormone stimulators. They shouldn't be used casually or continuously without expert guidance and monitoring. They can have significant effects, both good and potentially bad, if misused.
So powerful tools, but need respect and knowledge.
Definitely.
This has been incredibly comprehensive. But a lot of this sounds like it could get expensive. The supplements, the filters, maybe advanced testing. What about people on a tight budget?
That's a really important point, and he addresses it directly. He keeps coming back to the foundational habits that cost little or nothing.
Like exercise.
Exactly. Walking is free. Bodyweight exercises are free. Prioritizing sleep costs nothing. Finding simple stress management techniques like deep breathing or mindfulness, also free. These are the bedrock.
And food-wise.
Focus on whole, real foods, even the budget-friendly ones.
Yeah.
Beans, lentils, whole grains like oats or brown rice, eggs, seasonal vegetables, affordable cuts of meat if you eat meat. It doesn't have to be fancy, organic, imported stuff all the time.
Are there resources for that?
Yeah, he mentions the Environmental Working Group has a guide called Good Food on a Tight Budget. And honestly, just cooking more at home instead of eating out or buying processed meals saves a ton of money, usually.
Good point. Cooking from scratch is often cheaper and healthier. Finally, he touched on the sort of political landscape around health.
Yeah, it's interesting. He suggests that maybe the traditional political divides are shifting when it comes to health and food policy.
Oh, so?
He makes the case that health shouldn't be a partisan issue. It affects everyone. He points to some surprising areas of potential bipartisan agreement, like looking into psychedelics for veterans with PTSD.
So common ground focused on well-being.
That's the hope. He emphasizes the sheer scale of suffering in America, from chronic issues, metabolic problems, mental health crises, autoimmune diseases, obesity, diabetes. It's enormous. And tackling it really requires moving beyond political infighting and finding unified solutions.
That's a powerful message to end on. We've covered, wow, so much today, from really understanding your body as this interconnected system thanks to functional medicine.
To very practical steps focusing on real food, considering targeted supplements if needed, cleaning up your immediate environment.
And being aware of the, let's say, pressures from the food industry, it really boils down to starting with those foundations, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Real food, good sleep, moving your body, managing stress, that's 80% of the battle probably.
So remember, everyone, this journey to better health is personal. Take these ideas, see what resonates. Maybe start with one small change. Look into resources like the EWG. Maybe find a practitioner who thinks holistically.
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions and learn more about your own biology.
Because that understanding really is power when it comes to your well-being. This deep dive was just a starting point. The real question is, what's the next step you'll explore on your path to better health?